Hello, I'm Philippa East, author of Little White Lies. I hope you're all excited about entering the Jane Austen writing competition. Before I wrote my novel, I spent a number of years writing and publishing short stories. I don't have the magic answer to winning this particular competition, but I hope to share a few pointers to help you find your inspiration and write the best submission piece that you can. I'll talk in this video a bit about why short stories are so good to write, where to find examples of contemporary short stories to study, things to think about regarding story structure and characterization for short fiction, as well as some tips on prose style. So, some of the great things about writing short stories are that they can really be in any genre. They're a great way to experiment with a range of styles, themes, topics, and they can range from anywhere between romance to fantasy, sci-fi to horror. So they're a great way to play around and just experiment. Another great thing is that a short story can be written fairly quickly, really in a matter of days or weeks or sometimes months, whereas a novel, for example, can take a number of years. So that means that if you write a short story and it doesn't quite work out, you can put it in that bottom drawer without having lost too much of your time and investment. Another thing is that the things that you learn about the writing craft from writing short stories can also be applied to other types of fiction as well. And finally, there are lots and lots of opportunities these days to get short stories published. And these can be a really good way of building your writing CV. So thinking about the best way to get a sense of what makes a good contemporary short story is to read examples of stories currently being published. There are a range of places to find published short stories, and it depends a little bit on what kind of story you want to write. You'll find short stories in popular magazines such as The People's Friend and Women's Weekly. These stories tend to be quite commercial, meaning that they are accessible pieces on a relatable structure, sometimes with humour and with a pretty straightforward narrative structure. At the other end of the spectrum, you can find really highly experimental works which push the boundaries of the modern short story form. They're not everyone's cup of tea, but they can be really exciting and interesting to read. And in general, there's a whole range of different types and styles of short stories in literary journals, both online and in print. And hopefully by looking through those various journals, you'll find something to suit your taste and style. A great place to find out about the various short story publications is a website called shortstops.info. So if you go to www.shortstops.info, you'll find a whole wealth of information on there. So talking a little bit about how to actually go about writing and structuring a short story. So what makes a short story different to, say, a novel, and what maybe makes it the same? To me, a short story, like a novel, should still be a story. It's more than just an anecdote, a vignette, or a descriptive passage. In other words, to make it a story, you want it to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Something needs to happen in your story that changes things for your protagonist. In a full-length novel, we might have lots of these moments of change. There might be lots of ups and downs and twists and turns. But that's a tough ask when your word count is just a couple of thousand words. So I usually suggest that you focus your short story on just one or two key moments of change for your protagonist. This means your short story might comprise just 2 or 3 scenes. Perhaps at the start of your story, something happens to throw your character's ordinary life off balance. The middle of your story might show how your character grapples with the unexpected turn of events. At the end of the story, you might show a decision or action that the character takes to find a resolution. And often in short stories, these climactic moments of action or decision at the end can be quite subtle. For example, turning on a shift in thought or emotion. Perhaps your character gains new insight or experiences a new sense of freedom, comfort, or resolve. Don't feel a need to pack in lots of external action to make things happen. In fact, it can be hard to get this kind of action-based plot properly set up in the tight space of a short story. So changes can be on the inside, and short stories lend themselves really well to getting up close and intimate with our characters' internal worlds in this way. In fact, one of the things I like about writing short stories is that you don't have to spell everything out. In terms of the prose and the sentences and the phrases in your short story, again, you only have a limited number of words, so you don't need to fill in every detail for the reader. You can trust that they will absorb the particular moments you've chosen to present from that character's life without needing to know all the rest. So you don't need to give huge amounts of character backstory, and you don't need to explain everything about the world you've created. In fact, often the most powerful elements of a short story are the pieces that are left unsaid. Focus on the most pertinent details in the scenes you're presenting. Present these clearly, and don't worry about reams of backstory around them. If the story doesn't need it, just leave it out. And a bit more on prose style, because again words are so limited, in a short story it's really worth focusing on the nitty-gritty of your prose. Try to find words and phrases that work hard for you, those that conjure up images vividly in the reader's mind. This doesn't require fancy language. Rather, the key is to choose your words carefully. A single telling detail can capture a whole atmosphere or setting without you needing to use a whole paragraph to describe something. The more specific you are, the more clear a scene will be in the reader's mind. In a similar way, short stories lend themselves really well to the use of symbolism. If you're going to describe a room or the weather in your short story, can you do this with phrases that reflect the theme you're trying to convey or the specific atmosphere that you want to create? A great example of this is in Ernest Hemingway's short story, Hills Like White Elephants. It's a bit of an old story now, it's not the most contemporary, but it still has some great examples of how to write a short story and use the prose and the sentences really well. In the story, a couple at a railway station discuss whether or not the girl should have an abortion. Hemingway sets the scene with this phrase: "On this side there was no shade and no trees, and the station was between two lines of rails in the sun." This one sentence does a great job of providing a physical description of where the couple are, but also symbolising the sense of oppression and emotional exposure, the starkness of the decision they face, and the opposing choices on either side of them. So, final point about editing. As with any piece of writing, take time to rewrite and to edit. First drafts are great to get down, but don't stop there. If you can, put it away for a day or two or a week or two, and then come back to it. Reread it through and think about anything that could be improved. In particular, have you started in the best place? I've found so many times that cutting the first 2 paragraphs from my first draft gets me to the best opening moment. Maybe you can check this with your piece as well. It can be helpful to share the piece with a trusted reader or writer friend for feedback. I'd recommend, if you can, getting them to read the piece aloud to you or read it aloud to yourself. You'll often hear things differently going through it this way and spot bits that you want to iron out. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video and that some of these tips and pointers will be helpful for you. Do have fun writing your own short story and best of luck with the competition. Bye for now.